Happy International Women's Day and welcome back to the Boss Mum Circle podcast. I'm your host, Carly Raynsford, and we are kicking off season 2. My guest today is Felicity Ashley. Now, I could list all of her achievements: the ocean rowing, the cancer survival, the successful corporate career, the 3 kids, the upcoming Pacific Challenge, but that doesn't even come close to capturing who she is. What drew me to Felicity's story wasn't what she's done, it's what she learned from the absolute worst moments of her life and how she's turned that into something that helps other people. She rowed 3,000 miles across the Atlantic whilst unknowingly fighting bowel cancer. When she finally got diagnosed a few weeks later, she was a mum to 3 young children facing the terrifying possibility that she might not be there to watch them grow up. This June, she's getting back into a rowing boat to tackle the Pacific, raising money for Cancer Research UK. And between training, speaking, writing and raising a family, she's helping organisations and individuals navigate their own storms. Felicity, welcome to the Boss Mum Circle. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to take you straight back to December 2021, beginning of January 2022. You've just completed the world's toughest row across the Atlantic. 3,000 miles, 40 days at sea, and you are one of the fewest women to ever do the row. I think it's less than 250 women in the world. Take me back to that moment when you finished.
Oh, it was unforgettable. Most things in life don't live up to expectations, but that's one thing that absolutely did, and so much more besides. We, after 40 days at sea, not seeing anyone else apart from the 3 others in the boat, not really hearing anything else apart from general noise of the waves and the ocean, to round the corner into English Harbour in Antigua. It was just this sort of barrage of noise and sounds and sights, super yachts blaring their horns. You could hear.
Was it during the day or evening? Or
evening? We came in at sundown.
Oh wow!
So it was.
So you could see the lights.
Sundown on Friday night. That had been our aim.
Yeah.
Can we arrive in time for cocktails on Friday night? Yeah, perfect. The media boat was kind of doing donuts around our boat. The guy, the pilot of the boat, was kind of screaming at us. Flashlights going off. We felt like some sort of where between superheroes and celebrities. It was incredible. One of the restaurants stopped serving, and all of the diners kind of lined the edge of the dockside, and they were playing "We Are the Champions." And we kind of thought, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And it was only afterwards we realised it was for us. It was the most incredible experience, and then to hear our children's voices up on the fort, cheering us in, having not seen them for a couple of months, was unbelievable. Yeah.
Like you say, that feeling matches how you think it would feel.
Even more. Yeah. And just the emotions of finishing that row, it was just indescribably brilliant. And I think also we were so proud of ourselves. And again, there's not many times in life when you can genuinely, hand on heart, say, I'm proud of what I've just done. And it wasn't just what we'd done, it was how we did it. We arrived firm friends, having put our best foot forward, having got through so many challenges together and achieved something fairly extraordinary.
Who were your teammates?
My teammates were my sister, my younger sister Pip, who got the crew together, Jo, who was an old school mum friend of my sister's, and then Lebby, who rowed with Jo at university. Wow. So there was a connection between all of us, but we didn't all know each other before we started training. And
how long's the training process?
We trained for about 20 months.
Wow.
That was kind of from signing up to the row to completing the row. But the crew changed over that time. So Pip and I were in the crew from word go. Jo joined pretty quickly, but then Lebby only joined 6 months out.
And what was the reason you decided to do this all together? How does this idea even come into your everyday life?
That's a great question. My brother-in-law, so my sister's husband David, did the same race 2 years before us. So he did it in 2019, finished in 2020. And I just had a hip replacement at the time. And when he told me he was doing it, I just thought he was mad. I thought, why would you put yourself in a tiny boat in massive waves? The idea of the waves, frankly, terrified me. I just thought ridiculous. But it was when his race was underway and I started following them on social media and reading the updates and seeing some of the photos and the video footage that it sort of, I got more interested in it. Exactly, invested. And I think the turning point was the night he finished. And I'd set my alarm it was about 2 a.m. in the morning UK time. I'd set my alarm for the middle of the night. I sat up in bed and I was watching it with my headphones in on my iPad. And it was spine-tinglingly exciting watching his little boat come in and cross that finishing line. And I just remember sitting in bed thinking, wow, if I feel like this thousands of miles away, what must it be like to be in that boat finishing that race? And at that point I thought, something I'd like to do one day. But I thought the kids, when the kids are a bit older, but I'm not so old, I can't physically do it. So in my head, I thought maybe 10 years time. But as we all know, life never ends up as you plan it. And about a week later, my sister called me and she said, I've got a boat. Do you want to row the Atlantic? About 24 hours later, I called her back and said, yes, I'm in.
Wow.
Yeah. I just thought, well, why not? What an opportunity, an opportunity that will probably never come around again, or at least I thought so at the time.
So a few weeks later, everything's changing.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about getting your cancer diagnosis? Literally a few weeks after you've just done this lifetime achievement.
Yeah. I went from one epic adventure right into the next epic adventure. So after the row, you get a few niggles that you pick up after doing something like that, and most of them sort of faded away, resolved themselves. But the one thing that didn't was this sort of cramping that I had in my tummy, and I'd kind of just need to go to the loo. And actually that got worse after the row. It didn't settle down. I thought it was probably due to, just the strange thing that we've been doing, the odd food, dehydrated food that we've been eating.
And also the position you're in, because you're sat down constantly, aren't you? And
absolutely. I mean, there was nothing normal about what we'd been doing.
No.
So you would almost expect a change in bowel habits. I was about to say, But when it didn't settle down and actually it got worse to the point where I needed to go to the loo maybe 5, 6, 7 times a day, and then I started noticing blood in my stools, I thought, this isn't right.
Yeah.
And I did recognise some of the symptoms as being symptoms of bowel cancer, amongst other things. So I took myself off to the GP and had the usual tests done. And it came back probably about 3 weeks after my initial visit saying, well, we now need to refer you for a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
10 days later I went for my colonoscopy. Again, I knew that cancer was one of the things they had to rule out, but it's very much framed as, don't worry, I'm sure everything will be fine. We just need to rule it out.
Yeah.
So it was in my mind as a possibility, but my dad had diverticulitis, so a kind of a condition of the bowel for a long time. So I thought it was probably some kind of inherited condition like that. And then, of course, it wasn't. I was lying in the operating theatre having the colonoscopy. It was actually the day of the rowing awards dinner in London. So I'd made the decision not to have any kind of pain meds for it. So I was just having gas and air.
Yeah.
So that I could then drive to Joe's house to join the crew to go into London for the event. And so I was fully awake, lying on my side, watching this procedure happen on a plasma screen. But intermittently slugging on the gas and air, which kind of sends you up there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I just remember the endoscopist saying to the nurse who was standing by me, "Is she awake?" And then he said to me, "Are you awake? Can you hear this? Can you see that?" And I sort of, refrained from the next slug of gas and air to look at the screen. And I said, "Yes." He said, "Can you see that? Do you know what that is? That's a tumour. You've got cancer." And it was just like that. It was brutal. Yeah. And literally in the seconds it took to say those words, "You've got cancer," my world turned upside down.
I can't believe how...
It will never be the same again.
No. And like you say, and just from you telling that story of how you were told.
Yeah. In such a vulnerable position. I'm literally lying on my side with a tube at my bottom. I can't move. I've got no one else around me. No support. Nobody I know. And you're told you've got cancer and your mind goes everywhere.
Yeah.
It's what now? What if? Am I going to live?
Yeah. What was the next steps for you? And did they offer treatment straight away? Did you think, what do I do now?
Yeah. So, that started a whole flurry of activity in the operating theatre.
Yeah.
All sorts of people were coming and going. A senior consultant came in and was putting a cannula in my arm because I had to get then sent straight to the CT scanner to do a full body CT scan to see if it had spread everywhere or anywhere.
Yeah.
It was a big tumour. It was nearly 6 centimetres in diameter, stretching most of the way across my bowel. So I suspect the speed at which I was then referred to a CT scan was because it was large, and they probably anticipated it had progressed elsewhere.
How long did they think you'd had the tumour for?
Probably over a year.
Oh gosh.
So I'd done, most of my training with it growing, and all of the row itself. So then, literally minutes later, I was sent down to the CT scanning department for a CT scan. And in the meantime, the nurse had said, "Is there someone we can call for you?" And I said, "Well, my husband's in a meeting. It's a really important meeting. I can't disturb him." And she said,
"We can call your husband."
I think he needs to know. So then I made a call to my husband, and I said, "Can you come? I've got cancer." He said, "How do you know?" And I quite shirtily said, "Because the doctors just told me." And he said, "Oh." So then while I was having my CT scan, he arrived. Fortunately, he'd been down the road at a different hospital in Oxford, so he arrived. And then we were sat down with the endoscopist who went through the procedure, kind of talked me through what he'd found and what the next steps would be, which, you then go on to this treatment pathway effectively under the care of the cancer nurses and referred to a surgeon. And it all actually happened quite quickly. So 3 weeks after my diagnosis, I then had surgery.
3 weeks after.
Yeah. But what you don't know at that point is the staging, how serious it was. So when I was initially diagnosed, I didn't know if it's terminal or not. And there were about 6 days before I got the results of my scan. So I had a CT scan, which showed something on the liver. So then I had an MRI scan to kind of drill down into a bit more detail into that, which turned out to be benign. Just a little cyst, which is quite normal. So the scan results were quite positive in terms of it hasn't visibly spread.
Yeah.
So at that point, it could have been stage 2, it could have been stage 3. And it's only after the surgery that I found out that it had gone into the lymph nodes and therefore needed chemo. So you go, it's not like it's a black and white case and you get your answer straight away. There's all of this uncertainty hanging over you. You don't know if it'll be surgery, then back to work and back to normal life, or surgery, chemo, or surgery, chemo, something else. And
the roller coaster of emotions must just be exhausting every day, of where your brain's going. You've got children, you've got a husband, and whilst this is all happening, I know you did 6 rounds of chemo. Yeah. You also lost your dad. Yep. At your first chemo session?
After my So Dad had been diagnosed with terminal renal cancer about 4 years before. Wow. He'd been very well. He'd had 2 years of immunotherapy, which he'd done very well on. And then probably in the final year, he'd started to go downhill and kind of more tumours were cropping up here, there and everywhere. But he came out to the start of the Atlantic race and Mum and Dad came out to the finish in Antigua.
So he was there for your finish?
He was there, yeah. Although he was, as looking back, he was pretty ill at the time. Yeah. But he was there and he was so proud. And, I think for him being able to see his 2 daughters complete something like that was, priceless. Yes. But then he went downhill fairly steeply after that. And between my surgery and chemo, he then kind of stopped having treatment and was really having palliative care at home. But because I wasn't working because of my treatment, I was able to spend, the last 3 weeks of his life with him, looking after him. And, it's an awful time, but it's actually a very special time as well.
Just being present every day.
Absolutely,
there together.
Yeah. And also I think having cancer myself gave me more empathy and understanding for what he'd been through over the last 4 years. Yeah. And in some ways it probably brought us, even closer together at that point. But I remember when I was told, I heard the words, "You've got cancer," my thoughts immediately went to, how am I going to tell my parents? How am I going to tell the children? Yeah. Never any woe is me, nothing about me. It was the impact it's going to have on everyone around Dad, you. Especially because, of Dad's situation and the impact it's going to have on my children.
How did you and your husband cope with this? Like, did you have the serious conversations of, if this goes bad, do you, is that conversation, does that come straight away, do you think? Because as a mum, you're probably thinking ahead, as in right, I need to get my ducks in a row for my kids and all this stuff. Like, how do you deal with that?
I'm a very positive thinker, so I try not to go to that dark place of what if, I've tried not to go to the fear the worst scenario. Although there was one night between the diagnosis and getting the results of my scan, that period of 5 or 6 days when I didn't know if it was terminal or not.
Yeah.
And I just remember being in bed one night and turning to Paul, my husband, and saying, what if it's terminal?
Yeah.
What do we do? And that was probably the only time I really cried about it.
But otherwise,
but it was that
uncertainty,
uncertainty, just not
positive.
knowing, and it wasn't for me. It was for the kids.
How old were your children when you were diagnosed?
4, 6, and 9 when I was diagnosed.
Babies.
Yeah, actually 4, 7, and 9. My middle one had just turned 7. Yeah. So actually, the day after my diagnosis, I then had to go and host a trampolining party for him.
Oh, and this
what
is
a joy!
And this is it. Like
life goes on.
You put your face on.
Absolutely.
You're a mum still.
No one else knew.
Yeah, yeah. And that's incredible.
Yeah.
Looking back, whilst you were rowing the Atlantic, is there now after you had your diagnosis? Was there any telltale signs when you look back? Because obviously at the time, you're not thinking because you don't know.
Yeah.
And now when you do know, you obviously your mind must have cast it back to certain things. And what were your signs?
Yeah, quite a funny story actually. On an ocean rowing boat, there's no toilet, and so rowers use a builder's bucket, literally a builder's bucket. And we sort of had this unwritten rule that if you're on your rowing shift of 2 hours, if you need a wee, you can break to. We had actually a jug for wees. Mm-hmm. You can have a quick break for a quick wee, but you should be able to hold a number 2 poo in. But I would get, for some reason, and it happened during night shifts, I would just get this cramping in my tummy and feel like I really needed to use the bucket and couldn't hold it in. But I would wait for my sister to come on shift. Mm-hmm. And then when she was on shift, I said, look, I'm really sorry, Pip, I'm just going to nip to the bucket. And this sort of, it didn't happen every night shift, but it sort of happened fairly often. And it became literally the butt of crew jokes. Mm-hmm. And on the penultimate day of the race, we held a very tongue-in-cheek Mothership Awards ceremony where we gave out things like Best Mother Award, Worst Mother Award. But I got the Mother Most Likely to Need an Inconvenient Poo on Night Shift Award. Yeah. We all laughed about it because it seemed like a funny thing at the time. And as we spoke earlier, there was no reason to suspect it was down to anything other than what we were doing, what we were eating, because it wasn't normal. Yeah,
because what were you eating? Like dried
sort of
fruits?
50% of our meals were kind of dehydrated, like army ration packs.
Yeah.
And then just copious quantities of snacks.
Yeah.
Like the volume and the mix of stuff we were eating wasn't like normal, you'd eat in a normal day. We were eating probably twice as much as you would ordinarily.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't there be a change in your bowel habits? Yeah, and as I say, it was really only when we got back and that didn't settle down that I thought something not quite right. And actually, it's funny looking back on our social media stories because we documented those Mothership Awards and it's down there, Mother Most Likely to Need Inconvenient Poo on Night Shift, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And when you look back, you realise that was, those were the original signs.
Yeah.
But we just didn't know.
So you received pioneering treatment at the Churchill Hospital in Oxford. What was that journey like? Were they incredible?
I have to say they were brilliant. I can't praise the NHS more for the care that I received. It was quick. The emotional support from everyone that cared for me was brilliant. And what really stood out was they treated me as an individual, not just as another patient.
Yeah.
My surgeon was similar in age to me. She competed in Ironman competitions. I think she was my surgeon because we were sort of on a similar wavelength. And I just remember sitting down for my first consultation with her, and she said, "Look, the surgery you're going to have, you can be back on your feet and competing or doing what you do within 6 months." She said, the way I'm going to make the incisions will mean that if you want to wear a bikini again, you can wear a bikini again because I'm going to do a horizontal cut like a C-section scar rather than a straight up the middle.
Yeah. So
she was very thoughtful about what might be going through my head, the questions I might have, given that we have a sort of a similar background. And I also really remember her saying, look, if you have to have chemo, you won't lose your hair. And again, as a woman, your hair is such a big part of your identity. And it's probably, when you're going through cancer treatment, it's probably the most noticeable and standout thing that says screams you've got cancer is when women lose their hair.
And I think it's possibly, I don't know, is it one up there with the first things you think about when someone says you're going to have chemo? You're like, I'm going to lose my hair. You just envisage yourself with no hair. Yeah. And so for her to kind of dial into those thought processes that I would likely have and answer them straight up, I just thought was so perceptive. Wonderful surgeon called Kat Baker. She was brilliant. And all of the nursing staff were amazing. In fact, the senior consultant who did my cannula when I was initially diagnosed said, look, you just rode the Atlantic. All you need to do is approach this with the same, mental and physical resilience and you'll be fine. And she was so right. I mean, I think I would have done that anyway, but, she probably doesn't know how I remember those words and how they impacted me, but she was so right. And similarly, when I was in sort of recovery after the procedure, one of the nurses looking after me looked at my painted toenails because I'd had them done for the awards ceremony that night. And she said, well, they're pretty. What's that for? And I said, well, I was supposed to be going to this rowing, the Atlantic Rowing Awards this evening. But I said, I suppose I won't be going now. Because I just thought, well, life's changed. Yeah. And she said, no, go. She said, nothing has changed physically since you walked in here this morning. Yeah. So go, have your moment in the sun. Go and enjoy tonight because you've worked for it. You deserve it. And you can deal with this tomorrow. And I just thought, again, she's so right. And I think, don't you think that also helped you? And you've got a very positive attitude, but it boosted that attitude of, you're right. Like, this is who I am. I am going to the awards. Yeah.
And it's not something I can postpone or do ever again. It's tonight or never. Yeah. And I have earned it. And my thought process was, at some point in the future, it's very likely the cancer will take stuff away from me and stop me doing things. But it doesn't have to stop me doing this tonight. Yeah. So,
How did you and your husband decide to tell your children? Were you quite open and honest about that, you would have to have treatment, that life's going to be different?
Yeah, we talked about it quite a lot. And we both were very keen to be open and honest with them, be upfront about it, not hide the fact it was cancer, because we didn't want them hearing from someone else at school that mummy's got cancer. But that said, we were also very aware that they knew that my dad, who they call Popper, had cancer, and they knew that Popper was going to die from cancer. And, they were 4, 7 and 9. They were too little to really appreciate that cancers can be very different and have very different outcomes. And so that was probably our primary concern, was we wanted to be upfront and honest with them, but we didn't want to frighten them. And so we thought we'd slightly play it down. And we brought them into the kitchen one day after breakfast. And I said, look, mummy's got to go into hospital for an operation. I've got a lump in my tummy and they're going to remove it. But I'll be home in a few days and I'm going to be okay. Thinking that they'd sort of be intrigued and ask more questions about it. But they're quite used to me being in hospital because I'd had a hip replacement and was away for 3 days. A few years.
Plus, you're away for your row.
Yeah. So me being away didn't really faze them so much. And they just sort of nodded and went, anyway, can we go and watch TV now? Yeah. And we were both flummoxed by that. I was like, oh, okay. And then we thought, well, we can't now bring them back and go, actually, kids, it's really serious, it's cancer. So at that point, we thought, right, well, we'll just let it lie for the moment. And if they have more questions, we fully expected them to come back with more questions at some point. But no more questions came. And so then I had surgery, and it was when I knew that I then needed chemo, that, which was going to go on for 6 months and be more disruptive really for the family as a whole, that we then sat them down and said, well, look, I've got cancer. I'm going to have some more treatment. And then we just tried to explain, look, there are lots of different types of cancer. Some you can get better from, some you can't, like Popper's. Yeah. But I'm going to get better from mine and I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And it was a difficult conversation, and they, given the ages, they each kind of responded in different ways. My eldest is slightly more aloof. My middle one was much more sensitive about it. And Grace, my youngest, just too young to understand really what it was. But they were brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And lots of people asked me, how on earth did you cope with 3 young children and going through treatment? But actually they were my motivation for getting through it.
And, for protecting, a distraction as well, because you're still mum.
Still mum,
you
still have to get up, care for them, do everything you normally do. And they were they were a reason to get out of bed every day, to 100%. Not feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And to put a brave face on it, because I didn't want to frighten them. I didn't want them to see me suffering, because that would be the worst thing.
And like you said, that you had to go and do your child's birthday party.
Yeah.
So it's, you step into mum mode a bit more, don't you? You're like, well, I'm still here, I'm still their mum.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's, number one job. And it always will be, yeah.
You've identified 4 key lessons that cancer taught you. Life is precious and short. Don't wait for tomorrow. We're capable of so much more than we think. Purpose matters, and sharing our stories saves lives. Which of those hit you first, and which one do you think you still struggle with?
I think sharing stories, really, because I knew that my symptoms were symptoms of bowel cancer because of other people sharing their stories before me. In fact, one of the rowers in my Atlantic race, Ed, was rowing in memory of his wife, Anna, who died of bowel cancer in her mid-30s. And he used to post about the symptoms of bowel cancer on a regular basis. And at the time, I had no reason particularly to take any notice, but obviously they went into my subconscious somewhere, which is why when I started developing similar symptoms, I recognised them as bowel cancer symptoms.
Yeah.
And it was why when I went to the doctors, I said, I know that these are symptoms of bowel cancer. And I think, somebody like me in my position, being fit and youngish, presenting, could have been not taken seriously. But the fact that I actually used the words bowel cancer, I think made them take it seriously.
Take more seriously, yeah.
And genuinely, his post could well have been the reason that I'm still here today.
And this is it. And like you say, sharing stories, you're helping the next person and the next person.
Absolutely. And I've since spoken to him about it, and I just said, thank you. I said, thank you for doing what you've done. Because it's probably saved my life. And he said, he and Anna talked about it, and they said, if we can help just one other person not have to go through this, then it's worthwhile. And he said, you might be that person.
Yeah.
And so, that was very much, I felt almost immediately that I had to share my story, to pay that forward to other people, to help other people, raise awareness that it can happen to anyone at any point in their lives, but also talk about the symptoms, to just encourage people to go and get themselves checked out before it's too late, because early diagnosis is the key to better patient outcomes. And, I also encourage people to become more familiar with what's normal for you. Yeah. And if something becomes abnormal and lasts for more than a week, go and get it checked out.
And your body best anyway,
Yeah.
Now, you also did the Tenzing Hillary Everest Marathon last May.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that involve besides being the highest marathon in the world? And then I'll get on to why.
Yeah, absolutely. It involves a 10-day trek to Everest Base Camp, which in itself is pretty grueling. So you're going up to about 5,500 metres in altitude. And then you start the marathon at Everest Base. So 2 nights camping at Everest Base Camp, and then you start the marathon from there and sort of make your way gradually down the mountain. But what I think I didn't appreciate, and I suspect most people don't appreciate, is that if you think you're going to be doing a downhill marathon, but actually there's about 4 kilometres of climb in that. And it is absolutely brutal doing it at that kind of altitude.
And what made you do that?
Well, my oncologist said to me that, I'll be monitored for recurrence of bowel cancer for 5 years, which is a long time. So he said your greatest chance of recurrence will be the first 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So it's 27% chance of recurrence originally. And he said,
then does that get less?
It gets less then, yeah. It's quite, it's pretty high there for the first 2 or 3 years, but then it drops down. So he said, have a party at 3 years and then a big party at 5 years.
Okay.
And so I sort of added my own little twist to this party concept, and thought I want to mark 3 years in some way, shape or form. And so I called Sally, one of my adventurous speaker friends who's done loads of different challenges. And I said, Sally, I want to do something around May to mark my 3-year cancer anniversary. What crazy
suggest? Thing is happening in the world? Yeah.
And she said, well, I'm going to do the Tenzing Hillary Everest Marathon again, so come with me. And I just thought, brilliant, perfect. What better place to celebrate life and health than one of the most inspirational places on the planet.
I'd love to be a fly on your wall when you say to your husband, we need to have a chat when you get in from work, and he'll be like, oh my God, where are you going now? So let's also talk about the Pacific Row that's happening this June. So another huge, massive challenge. You are rowing 2,800 miles from Monterey to Hawaii with Row for Life, and raising money for Cancer Research UK. So why are you putting yourself through this again?
I mean, there's lots of different reasons. First and foremost, it's very much a purpose-driven mission, this one. It's about far more than rowing 2,800 miles and crossing an ocean. It's about giving back, raising money for Cancer Research UK. It's a cause that's so close to all of our hearts. So I've obviously had bowel cancer. JP, our skipper's had skin cancer twice. Vix, the third in the crew, lost her dad like I did to cancer. So there's a very personal, meaning behind it all. And for me, it's about giving back, for the incredible treatment and care that I've had. But it's also about paying that forward and, helping raise awareness, but also helping raise money to pump into research to help other people still facing their own battles, or other people that will face their battles in the future. And actually, with International Women's Day and Give to Gain, it's, it fits perfectly with that. It's about giving back so that other people can gain in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, for those of us who haven't rowed across an ocean, what's a typical day out at sea? How do you take it in turns? Do you do shifts? How does it work? When do you sleep?
Yeah. Typical day is just following the routine of eat, sleep, row, repeat.
Yeah.
We're a 3 this time rather than a 4, so the shift patterns will be a little bit different. It's likely that for the first few days we'll have to do 2 hours on, 1 hour off. So 2 people rowing, 1 person resting.
And that's just constant.
Constant. You're just rolling in and out.
So you get just an hour's sleep if you manage to fall asleep within that hour.
Yeah. But in that hour, we'll have to eat, clean ourselves, do any kind of boat jobs. So we will be pretty sleep deprived, particularly at the start of the race. Because at the start of the race, everything is trying to push you back onto the coast of California, the currents, the wind, the waves, everything.
Yeah.
And so you've just got to get your head down, grit your teeth and get through that. After that, hopefully, if the conditions allow, we will then be able to roll into a 2 hours on, 2 hours off pattern. So we'll get a little bit more sleep. So we've just got to be very flexible rowing as a trio and with the conditions we're expecting in the Pacific. But there's no doubt about it. It will be an almighty physical and mental challenge, but one that we're absolutely up for. And then,
you've got a little heads up, haven't you? Kind of been in that situation before.
Yes.
And do you also think being a mum to 3 children, that sleep deprived that's kind of in your corner?
It's a superpower.
It's a superpower. Yeah. You thrive on, an hour here, an hour there. Yeah. And it's almost like it's prepped you or helped prep you.
Such brilliant preparation. Because physically and mentally, emotionally, you can continue. Your body will carry on the next day because it has to, or the next shift because it has to. You're used to having broken nights over and over and over again. In fact, for far longer than 40 days, you're used to having broken nights. So, I go into it not worrying about sleep deprivation really, because I've been there and done it before and know that I've carried on.
Does it get emotional? I mean, it's you 3. I know it was 4 before, but there must be days where one of you's having a down day, and it's down to the other teammates to pick that person up. And do you all take it in turns? It must be complete. I don't want to say emotional roller coaster because you're in a boat, but how do you deal with those days, the down days? It
is a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but as you say, it's about knowing your team inside and out and understanding what they need from you when they're having a bad day. So we've had those conversations. It's I know that the other 2 just need a big old hug.
Yeah.
If they're having a downer, put my arms around them and that will give them a lift. And so that's why, the whole teamwork, relationships, understanding each other is so critical as part of your training.
Yeah.
Because over that duration of race, you will go through these ups and downs. Even the most positive person like me will go through those ups and downs. But it's also about acknowledging that's going to happen, anticipating it so you can do something about it when it happens.
And are you scared this time round? Because, I mean, I can only compare it to childbirth. The first time, it's the unknown. You just take it as it comes and you trust everyone around you. The second time, I was really scared because I knew what was coming. So is that similar? As in you, like the waves, the nighttime, or do you not think like that?
No, less scared because I've done it before, I think. I am so looking forward to it. And genuinely, I loved every single day of the 40-day Atlantic row. Yes, of course, it was hard. There were times when we were scared. It was like being on a white knuckle ride at night sometimes. But I know that now. And actually what I know is that I thrive on that kind of challenge. And so I am really looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to the fact that it's going to be even more of a physical challenge than the last one, simply because of the weather conditions.
Okay.
And so, it probably gives you a bit of an insight into how my mind operates, but I'm looking forward to challenging myself more, seeing how hard I can push myself.
Yourself, yeah. You've written a book.
Yes.
Called Stronger Than the Storm, One Woman's Journey of Adventure, Adversity and Unbreakable Spirit, which is apt completely. What made you want to write a book, and how did it make you feel during the process of writing a book? Because obviously it brings everything back, again to what your journey was.
Yeah, because it's a very personal story. It's a very raw account of kind of everything I went through, primarily focusing on the row and then the cancer. What made me want to write it is so many people, as a speaker, so many people ask me, have you got a book?
Yeah.
And I remember actually one of my old work colleagues, Joanne, saying, when I was telling her the full story, saying, there's a book in there somewhere. Yeah. And again, it was about planting a seed. And I have said to many people on many occasions, I would rather stick needles in my eyes than write a book. But that was before I had a story to tell. And so just gradually through the course of speaking and being asked on numerous occasions, do you have a book? I just thought, I need to write this down. There's a book here. And again, I just thought, it's another challenge. Yeah. It's another way of pushing myself outside my comfort zone and doing something I never thought I would do. Again, it's about seizing opportunities and not waiting for tomorrow. So I remember making a connection with somebody on LinkedIn who was an author, a recently published author. And I kind of just said, I see you've published your book. Yeah. Congratulations. And he said, I did. And I did this writing course and I'll put you in touch with this person. Yeah. I thought, may as well have a chat. So I had a chat with this chap and he said, I'm starting my writing course next week. There's a space. Do you want to do it? And
it's amazing, isn't it, how it just has this knock-on effect.
And I literally thought, well, why not? Yeah. May as well do it now. And so I did I think it was about 10-week writing course.
Wow.
And it took me from, I knew the story, so it wasn't like I didn't have an idea about what I was going to write, but it took me from no words to an almost finished manuscript.
Yeah.
So I started writing probably in mid-October and I published my book the following July. So fairly quick time frame.
Yeah.
But it was a very therapeutic, cathartic experience writing it because it was like reliving my story from start to finish. I laughed a lot through it. There were moments when I cried through it.
There's probably as well things you've forgotten about that then you remembered. You're like, that happened.
Yeah. And it was such a brilliant thing to relive the row through the pages of the book and through writing it down. You don't know how capable you are. We're all so much stronger than we think. Yeah. And when you're tested, you can find this inner strength and courage to get through it. And so, don't fear the hard times. Don't stop yourself doing hard things because you will get through it.
Yeah.
And, I think genuinely, I'm an ordinary working mum. I've just chosen to do some extraordinary things and I've faced some tough challenges in life. But everyone can do it. And I hope that people reading my book relate to that as an ordinary person, just having done some extraordinary things.
How do your kids feel about you getting back in a rowing boat?
On the whole, they're very excited about it. I mean, not particularly surprised, because for them it's normal.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you go and do something like that? I think it's slightly more of a challenge in some ways emotionally this time round because they're older and they understand the concept of time more. So they understand that me being away from them for sort of 6 weeks is a long time. Grace, my youngest, who's 8 now and was 4 for the Atlantic, she's definitely more concerned about me being away.
Mm-hmm.
But equally, they know that they get a holiday in Hawaii at the end of it, and that's their motivation.
Yeah, so everyone's kind of got this reward at the end.
Yeah.
And then do you have time out there as a family?
We'll have a 2-week holiday in Hawaii at the end. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah.
And do you have communication with everyone? What's the communication like when you're away?
Oh, communication is brilliant.
Yeah.
We have satellite phones, so you can, almost unlimited calls from the boat. But we've also got Starlink, which is phenomenal. So we'll be able to, do live broadcasts from the boat.
And stuff.
Yeah, video calls, send content back.
And do you think that helps, having that contact? Does that get you through a hard day, or do you think that sometimes makes the day harder when you've just got off the phone to your kids?
I think it's mainly can make it harder.
Yeah.
Because, if there's something going on at home, you can't do anything about it out there. And equally, I think it's harder for them if you're constantly dropping in and out of their life. Almost it's easier for you just to be away, for them to sort of forget about you being there, get into a different routine and get on with life. And also on the boat, you don't have much time. If we've only got an hour to rest, if you're taking up some of that hour with making calls, then you're not sleeping enough. Yeah. So you've got, again, it's about prioritization.
Yeah.
And yes, they're a priority, but it's not necessarily doing them any favours to be constantly calling and dropping into life.
If someone listening right now is going through their own storm, whether that's health crisis, career crisis, relationship breakdown, whatever it might be, what's your message to them? What's your mantra on this?
I think it's try and find your light at the end of the tunnel. Try and find your why, your reason for getting yourself up every day, because there will be something that you can kind of latch onto to help draw you through it. It's literally the light at the end of the tunnel. But also know that we all have this inner strength within us, and we all have our own unique superpower. Yeah. And use that, to get you through. It's not about looking around at other people and comparing yourself to other people. It's about understanding what makes you strong and using that to get you through it, because we're all so much stronger than we think. Yeah. And you will get through it. You've just got to put one foot in front of the other.
What's next for you after the Pacific? Because I don't believe for a second this is going to be it. What's on the agenda for you? Where do you want to go with all of this?
There's so different things. I would love to do something significant to mark 5 years, which will be when I kind of stop being monitored for recurrence, and when I can, I'll never put it into the past, because cancer will always be part of me now. But it
drives you to who you are today,
absolutely,
doesn't it?
Yeah. I know it sounds odd, but I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't, wish it hadn't happened, because it's totally transformed my life. So I'll do something at 5 years, but I genuinely don't know what that is yet. I'm open to all sorts of wacky suggestions. And then it's about sort of driving my business forward as well, speaking more, and trying to spread the message, get the message out there, help as many people as I can, whether that's through my book, through speaking.
Your business now, tell us about that.
So I'm a professional speaker, motivational speaker. So I blend my business background with this more recent experience of adventure and adversity. I share the lessons that I've learned and some of the tools like reframing that have helped me to get through various challenges. But it's always about relating it back to the workplace and how people can navigate change, navigate challenge, how they achieve massive goals. Speaking to as many people as I can, really. Because, even though my personal experience is something that people might not relate to, the lessons that I've learned are equally applicable across almost any type of change or challenge.
Yeah. Okay, final question. Finish the sentence. I want to be remembered for.
I want to be remembered for showing my children that anything is possible, for bringing them up to be unconstrained by limiting beliefs, and knowing that they can go after any dream. Any dream is realistic.
I love that. And I don't know your children, but they must just think mummy's a superhero anyway. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I just want to wish you all the luck in the world for your row in June. I think what you're doing is amazing, and keep spreading the message. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean the world if you could rate and review the podcast. It really helps us reach more amazing mums like you. Don't forget to check out the show notes for more about today's guest, including any links or resources we mentioned in the episode. And of course, hit follow so you don't miss the next inspiring conversation. Until next time, keep leading, keep thriving, and keep being the boss mum you are.